to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 2049, House Histories, Uncovering the Story of Your Ancestors' Home. Yes, did you know that looking into the details of a house's history is actually the job of a genealogist? That's a genealogist. That's actually a specialty within the genealogy world. When I first became a professional genealogist, the basic stuff that I knew is, doing the traditional family tree and looking in for the stories and that sort of stuff. And but as I started looking at the different professions within, I found the house genealogist, and they actually go in and they research the history of a house. And then I was the forensic genealogist, which helps with finding adopted children, or finding helping the adopted child to find their parents. They can be called in for different types of court cases and things. There's a whole slew. I mean, I thought genealogy was like about this much. They had about this many different specialities. No, it's more like this much. But house histories happens to be one of them. So I thought, well, tonight, let's take a look at house histories and see what we can uncover, and have some fun that way. So, what is the history of your ancestors' homes? What secrets do those walls contain? What secrets are below the floorboards? What secrets are in the walls? Yes. Or even in the attic. Oh, there's so many different things you can do. So let's have a look to see what sort of things as a genealogist that we can find when we're looking up the history of a house and how we can go into that. And I just clicked the wrong key. Okay, so here's a good example. A woman researching her great-grandparents' farmhouse discovered that her family owned it, before her family had owned it. Jeepers, I'll read your notes. Let's rewind. Let's start this again. A woman researching her great-grandparents' farmhouse discovered that before her family owned it, it had been a stop on the Underground Railroad. Her ancestors never knew, but the home held a powerful history beneath its floorboards. So you never know what's going to be hiding down there. So how would you even start with looking to research the history of a family home? Well, always with anything in genealogy, start with what you know. What are the facts that you already have? What facts do you know about the house? It's like the same in genealogy. What facts do you know about yourself, your siblings, your parents, your grandparents, and start working out. So in this case, we start with what you know. Talk to older family members. They may recall any renovations, old addresses, or stories about the house. Look at family photos for clues. What did the house look like in the past? Any unique architectural details? Check old letters, diaries, and legal documents that mention the home. Use online property and census records. Census records for the US, UK, Canada, etc. Older census lists. Jeepers, there's so many. Older census lists, addresses, homeowners, and sometimes even property values. You've also got historical property records, such as searching the local county assessor's office. There's those assessors again. The county assessor's offices or land deeds to trace home ownership. Who lived in the home before then? And when you're looking at the assessor's office, what taxes were paid on the home? Were there any taxes paid on the home? Who was responsible for those? You also have the Sanborn fire insurance maps. These maps from the late 1800s to the 1900s show building layouts, materials, and street changes over time. So it could be that the street the ancestors' home used to be on might now be called something else. So this is a good way of being able to find that information. Also check local history, societies, and archives. City directories, tax records often list the property owners by year. Building permits and renovation records may reveal major changes to the structure. Library archives and newspapers sometimes contain stories about notable houses or families. And you can also use Google Earth's time machine feature to compare aerial images of a property over the years. Now, that's really cool. I can't remember how to get back into it, but I remember when that time machine thing first came out, I went in and had a look. It was pretty cool to watch this land change over the time, and watching the house going from nothing there to seeing the small community built there with roads and everything. And it was actually pretty cool. I just don't remember how to do it. I got to go back and play with it. I'd actually forgotten about it till I was researching for this, and I suddenly thought, oh yeah, I got to go back in and check that out because there's some pretty cool stuff in there. Folding. Gee, I don't know what's going on with between the mouth and the brain today. Finding old property records, maps, and house deeds. Where to locate the property deeds and ownership records. Check with the county clerk's office and record deeds. They often hold official property transfers. The Bureau of Land Management in the US, the federal land grants and homestead records. This is when people were granted land. Where they had the GI program. They did the, what was the other one? It's gone. National Archives in the UK, US, Canada, Australia, etc. Houses, they hold older property documents. Using old maps to reconstruct a home's history. Plat, that's P-L-A-T, maps and land surveys show property boundaries and how the land was divided. The Sanborn maps were created for fire insurance. They document the evolution of buildings and neighborhoods. And aerial photos and historical atlases compare old and new images to see the structure changes over time. And see, there's a lot involved in all of this, right? So how about uncovering hidden home histories? Hidden home histories. Say that 3 times fast. Now, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I mean, yeah. Some houses held hidden passageways, secret rooms, or historical significance. In some European homes, walls were inscribed with the names of past owners. It was a built-in record. For example, a family in New England discovered that their home's attic was once a Revolutionary War hideout. In some places, home deeds includes covenants or restrictions that reveal social norms of the time. Some even banned indoor plumbing when first built. Oh my gosh! I have a friend who I visited a friend in Melbourne when I spent 3 weeks working in Melbourne one year as we were transferring the help desk from I worked for a computer company, and we were transferring the help desk from New Zealand to Australia, and they were combining it into one. And so I went over there to transfer the New Zealand portion over and to train up whoever was taking over the New Zealand market, which actually happened to be another Kiwi. And then there was another girl who used to work there who was a New Zealander as well. And so we actually went to visit her in her home. And she had this gorgeous Victorian style home that looked amazing on the outside. And then you went in and like the front rooms were done in like this vintage Victorian style. And then you walked down the hall a bit and then the place just opened up like you wouldn't believe and became very modern. And because of the covenants that they have in Melbourne, these particular homes, you were not allowed to change the front of the house, nor the first 2 rooms of the house that could be seen through the front windows. So she had to keep the 2 front rooms in the period of in which the house was built, but they could do whatever they liked with the back of the house. And so they completely opened it. They had this humongous room that was a kitchen, dining, family room area. It was just huge. And then they had this area that went upstairs to where the bedrooms were. But the front of the house was all the Victorian style. Victorian style. And then the 2 front rooms were decorated in that as well. Actually, no, I think hers might have been Art Deco. I'm trying to remember. No, hers was Victorian. So I thought that was very interesting. And so when you're looking at histories of houses, look for stuff like that, where houses where the front of the house can't be changed. And it may just be the facade that can't be changed and everything behind it can be, or it could be even what can be seen through the front windows cannot be changed, because they want you to look you're looking at this period house from the outside, they want you to see the period of the house of the inside as well. So I don't know. Some people like that, some people won't, but just be aware that there are some places that will have things like that on there for historical homes. Let's look at some famous and historic homes with family connections. Little house that became a landmark. The Laura Ingalls Wilder House in Missouri started as a humble farm, but now is a national historical landmark due to the Little House book series. Isn't that cool? They just had like a big 50th anniversary thing for Little House on the Prairie too, for the TV series. They brought all of the actors and actresses back to the town that was, to the films, the movie set and all of that sort of things. Apparently people still go there and everything else. Many families have, and it was actually really cool because we got to hear some of the stories and things like that. And like Laura and Nellie were always at odds with each other and were like, worst enemies, and yet they're the best of friends in real life. It was amazing. Many families have ancestral homes that later became museums or historical sites without even realizing their importance. Yeah, this is why you have to, if somebody's going to demolish a house, research it first. Or if you're buying a house with the thought of tearing it down and putting something else in there, check with the local county and everything else. And this is when you have to go through the records. This is when you get somebody like a genealogist who specializes in this to come in, and they will research for you, because it could be that there's something historical at that place and you can't touch it. You can't tear it down. Let's see, the house that housed generations. Many old homes house multiple generations, grandparents, parents, and children, all under one roof. For example, in Ireland, some family farmhouses have been passed down for over 300 years. Can you imagine the history that those houses have seen? Homes with unexpected histories. A family researching their Victorian home found out it was once a speakeasy during Prohibition. Now, if you don't know what a speakeasy is, this is where they, during Prohibition, they built these secret rooms with secret doors to get into, where they basically, and the speakeasy was basically a bar, that people would come in the front door like they were going to visit the people in the house, and then they work their way through the house, and they go through this secret passageway into the speakeasy, where it was just like a gentleman's lounge. It was the leather seats of the time period. They could smoke their cigars in there. They could have some libations that were prohibited. So finding things like that is pretty amazing. A Texas couple discovered that their 19th century home once belonged to a famous outlaw who hid there from the law. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that's like, yeah. Some old mansions have been linked to historical figures, artists, and even ghost stories. Yes, I never got to stay there, but the Marriott Ranch in Virginia is supposedly haunted. And people who have stayed there, and like when I used to work with Marriott, people would tell me that my co-workers and stuff who had actually stayed there would tell me some of the weird stuff that had happened to them when they were staying there and that sort of stuff. And I was just like, okay. But the Marriott Ranch is supposedly haunted. And some people have had interactions with the ghosts in some way. So have you researched your family's home history? Did you uncover anything surprising? Do you have a house that has been in your family for generations? And have you actually researched it? I know the manor house back in Warboys in England, in Huntingdonshire, which is now Cambridge, when my parents went to visit there, they actually called the current owner of the place and arranged to go in and meet. And he actually had a pamphlet a document typed up, which had the history of the house, like when it was first built, the different owners throughout the time, different things that had happened there. And so the manor house sits here, and in the front yard is where the church is that the family would go to. And also a lot of my ancestors are buried in there as well. And then there was the driveway that went down the side of the church. And so, so they got this document. I didn't even think to bring it in here. I think it might have been packed into one of my keep boxes. Yeah, that might take me a while to find that. But they had the whole history of the house, like when it was constructed, all the owners over the years. Did the owners make any changes to the house over time? There was what, I don't know if it might have been it was the owner when Mum and Dad when my parents went to visit. The owner there had just restored the house back to what it used to be. He said when he purchased it, there was this Italian marble, this Italian, the bathrooms had been converted to like looking like this Italian thing. He said it was just totally out of character with the house. And so he basically restored the house back to what it was and took them on a tour through the house and everything else and gave them a copy of this, and that we could see on there when our family used to own the manor house, and that when my ancestors used to own the manor house. So that's a really cool document to have because it gives me the history of the house, and some of the stories that happened to some of the owners that lived in the house are in, like it'll make a mention of it, and then you can go and research those stories. Like these young girls who decided that the people who lived in the house were witches. Yes, and that was there's a big story about witches in the 1600s in Warboys, and the family that was targeted was the those that were currently living in the manor house. And they were just, and it was just these girls just being spiteful, basically being bullies is what they were doing, and falsely accusing this couple and their daughter of witchcraft and all this sort of thing. So I have the whole thing in a book. There's actually a book about it. It's just a short, quick read, and it's very interesting. Now, every home has a history, and tracing your ancestors' home can uncover incredible stories. Oh, I'll tell you a really cool house to go through. It's not actually a house, it's a palace. It's the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna. That was really cool to go through. We went on a guided tour through there, but some of it was was closed off because they were renovating the rooms and preserving some of the paintings that were on the walls. But you would go into these rooms, and there was like 20 to 30 foot tall, or even taller ceilings in there that had these massive paintings that went from one end of the room to the other along this big wall. It was all framed and everything else. It was incredible. But my favorite part was that our tour guide would show us where the secret passages were, and they had these passages. So that was the way the servants moved through the house. So if the servants had to go to the mistress's room or had to go to one of the parlors or something like that, the mistress of the house, or the queen, she wasn't called a queen, the equivalent of the empress, as in the mistress, being the mistress of the house, the overseer of the house. To get to any of the rooms, they would use these hidden passages to move from room to room and to deliver beverage, foods and drinks and whatever needed to be brought in as well. And it was really cool because you'd open the thing and you could see these passages, and they weren't very well lit. And I'm sort of like thinking, oh, God, they would have scared the bejesus out of me, but it still would have been cool walking through them. But they would bring in meals into different rooms. Like if they decided to have a meal in their bedroom or a snack in their bedroom, they would take them through these passages rather than the servants being seen in the hallways with the royals. This was a way that they were able to move through the household and all of that sort of thing. And I'm like thinking, I wonder how many times the kids as teenagers would use those passages to go sneaking out of the palace. So, every home has its history, and tracing your ancestors' home can uncover incredible stories, whether it is a grand estate or a simple farmhouse. These homes hold the memories of the past. So your challenge is to pick an old family address and start researching. What can you discover about your ancestors' homes? From secret tunnels to forgotten owners, every home has a past waiting to be discovered. If Walls Could Talk, that's actually a really cool TV series. There was a, what was that on? It was on like the Discovery Channel, I think it was. It was called If Walls Could Talk, and they would, and this TV, the host of the show would come in there, and they would talk to people who had found things when they were renovating the house. There was stuff hidden, basically stuff hidden in the walls. And so this crew would come in and find the story behind whatever it was that they found in the walls, and basically appraised it for them and that sort of stuff as well. But there were some really cool stories about how they found stuff in walls and things like that. It was quite amazing. So if walls could talk, what stories would your ancestors' home tell? So think about homes that the ancestors have been in for some time that you've known was a house of theirs. I've got a couple in mind for my mother-in-law to go and have a look at, and I'm curious to go and see what stories I can find about those. But yeah, so finding the home's histories is actually a role for a genealogist. Who knew? Well, I have for a while, but educating people on the different roles within genealogy. You got genealogy, but there's a lot of different specialities in there. So, and home histories happens to be one of them. So with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konara.